All right. Good morning, everybody. I am so thrilled to have Nahshon Cook here on the call with me today. And I don't know if you wanted to introduce yourself a little bit to our audience, but yeah.
I don't think about myself too much. My name is Nahshon Cook. I'm a horseman from amongst other things, from Parker, Colorado. We have our little farm out here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I work with a lot of, now mostly horses with physical trauma and the emotional traumas that come from that. And so that's kind of where my my intellectual and uh, that's where all my intellectual aptitudes in horses right now are headed. Is that rehab process and back into training. Yeah.
Yeah, lovely. And you and I first met, I think it was in Texas last year at the summit. And it was really, really lovely to get to know you a little bit there and to get to continue to follow your journey and your process. So I've been really looking forward to this today.
Yeah, there's a lot that's shifting in my world. And just finding my feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you help horses find their feet as well, to a certain degree.
Yeah, I think that, I think that with like horses and people, and these particular horses and their people, it's really interesting to see kind of the resilience that they get from each other when they're told that they're not possible and they don't believe it, and working out with that idea of a belief just being the story that you tell yourself, and until it's true for you. It's been really, really interesting to have these horses come in with seemingly impossible physical and biomechanical challenges, and coming into the space with them, not really knowing, not allowing myself not to know too much so that I can ask questions of them and see kind of what feedback they give me, and then building a process from there. And so it's I love it because, like I said, it doesn't allow me to stay too stuck in what I've learned. It keeps my ego in check, which is also super helpful right now. And because of that, like, you allow yourself to stay low enough to ask questions and be curious and be open to answers. Yeah.
And so when you're working with, if we work with this off this topic of trauma in the horse-human interface, so to speak, what is it that you're open to hearing? What are the things that you start to notice when you start to listen in, that you pick up on when you're working in this capacity of rehab?
Yeah, a lot of what I have found, is that a lot of this injury is from people doing the best that they can, and the heartbreak that sometimes comes with realizing that it isn't enough, or it's actually been detrimental. And a lot of people come to me as kind of a last resort, and so I think that, like, before the real option of euthanizing them is going to be made. And there's so much of our lives that horses hold for us that sometimes we're not realizing that they hold for us. And as the horse gets better, as I ask the horse to try and allow their brain to explore if their body feels good enough to try this, there's all of this worry around the horse not around the question being too big for the horse.
Right.
And so I think that the main thing that I really encourage people to do is, like, it's really okay to feel fear, but being afraid is not helpful. And it's really okay to ask a ton of questions, but also, like, I am no good to these people and their horses, if I'm not allowed to explore what's possible. You know, as like, you've gone to the vet said they've done all they can do. You've gone to the chiropractor and the body worker and all of this stuff, and they've done all that they can do, and you're here. And so let's just see what the brain knows by how the body is moving. You know, and let's see then if we can change that space. And what I find is that, you know, there are so many unresolved things that people bring to this work when their horses are being asked to push beyond to allow the body to be pushed beyond what the brain believes is possible for it. And so it's that bridge, right? It's that bridge, that work that I do with these horses is that bridge from, you know, building that bridge from creation, or from survival to creation, you know? And so I think, and then also, there's just, and I know some people can do it, but some people have it, but like, I can also feel when energy that's not mine is trying to balance itself in my body. And so I can talk to folks and I can say, hey, like, I'm feeling this in my right shoulder, and I know that this isn't me. So, like, if you breathe into that, like, what memory is there, and what emotion is there with it, and who put it there, and why is it valuable? And as people bring that attention to themselves, it's crazy, because horses start getting better.
Yeah,
You
that's
know?
exactly the whole point of all of this, you know, is
Yeah.
how is human healing supporting horses to heal, you know? And I hear this all the time, is like, my horse has an issue. And I've talked previously in other podcast interviews about the idea of the identified patient. In psychotherapy, we talk about the identified patient, and it's usually the kid that gets yanked off to therapy by their parents. And it's like, well, actually, the kid is often symptomatic of what is going on in the family system. And so how do we actually broaden the view to start looking at, oh, the humans in the equation, not just, oh, my horse has this shoulder issue, or my horse has this thing. And it's like, actually, what is going on for you as the human? And then it's like, oh, wow, you start to really see the interplay.
Yeah.
You know?
And it was really interesting, because it all, like, this was not my intention. This work was not my intention. Like, it happened just by, I mean, really, I fell into it. And I when I was teaching in Thailand and training in Thailand, I didn't really, there were two horses, Golden and Garlic, who had just been, and another one named Gang, who had just been kind of put off. And Golden was this beautiful thoroughbred, and it was, you know, every time because a lot of the trainers there are cavalrymen, right? They're from the Thai cavalry. And it was very interesting, because every time he saw a Thai cavalryman trainer, he would limp. He would make himself not usable. And Garlic had this horrible roachback, and people just wrote him off. And then there was this young horse, Gang, who was born with knees. He was born kind of slew-footed and had half of a lower jaw. And all of these horses came to me in dreams and said that, like, they were ready to work, you know, and you know, they sat there for years and years because of what folks thought were possible for whatever reason. And it wasn't necessarily that they didn't want to do the work. They weren't being asked to do the work in a way that they believed they could say yes to,
Right.
in a way that didn't feel, I mean, and so I think that that's kind of the thing, is just kind of working out of a pedagogy that is very open to what the horse wants me to help them with. And there are sometimes horses don't want my help. And I'm very honest and clear about that too. Like, and it's no, they just don't want my help.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
I can't do anything. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It reminds me a little bit, there's a book that came out recently looking at this acts of animal resistance, and this idea of animal resistance to commodification by humans, and how are animals expressing no, and viewing that not as necessarily something to overcome, but to honor. So I'm really hearing you say that in what you're saying. There's going to be a place where it's a maybe, and how do we get to a yes? And then there's going to be a place where it's a flat out no. And it's not just no this way, it's no, no, like it's no entirely.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that, and I think that, and I think that, there has been a lot of conversation around horses, around whether or not horses can actually, or animals can do that, and like say no in a way that's worthy of people honoring. And I think even that question is abusive.
Right. Yeah,
I
exactly.
I
Yeah.
think that that's an abusive question. Like, if
Yes.
you're asking if they can say no, then that means that you're not coming into this situation ready to hear what the
Yeah.
answers that they have to offer to your questions. You're looking for subservience,
Yeah.
you know? Um, and that's a thing that I have to really work with people too. Like, and so, it's been really, really fun. Um, just allowing, and it's helped me even in the training process with my horses, and with the horses that I have in training, with the horses and the riding horses and students that I have in training, and just creating a workspace where we really don't have expectation, and because of that, we don't really have judgment, which means that we're super curious, and we're getting more and more and more correct work with less and less and less and less and less.
Yeah.
And so it's just really beautiful that, I feel like as a young trainer, that I'm finding ways to to I'm finding more ways to bring horses that weren't possible back into them believing that they're possible enough to try.
Yeah.
you
That's such a
know
beautiful thing, the idea that the horse comes back to believing that they are possible. Like
yeah,
there's an embodied sense that I get when you say that this I'm possible. Like there's something that feels so much lighter in me when I hear those words. And I
yeah,
imagine, like we can't ask a horse to understand human language, but the concept of feeling capacity, the concept of feeling possibility and mastery and freedom and ability. I mean, there's a felt sense that comes along with that,
and safety.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, and I think that that's been the thing, is that, like, yeah, and I think that, and I don't know how some people communicate with horses and how some
Right.
people hear with horses. But like for me, it's not an abstraction. Like I I they will I will be walking by, and like my young horse Remy, he's like, you can just feel the intention. He's like, I want to hang out with you right now.
Yeah.
He's in from his paddock, and he's looking over his door, and he's just like, I want to hang out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, or like even with the horses that, like, I'm working with a horse currently right now, a 20-year-old Missouri Foxtrotter who has the arthritis in his pastern. And like his whole process has been, he has shown me the whole way in dreams. I mean, and it's like, if I don't listen to what they say, then why am I offering my help?
Yeah.
Because the thing is that like, I have the technique, I have the technique, but like, I need them to show me when.
Yeah.
When are you available to answer this question? You know? And like, how do I get you to the place where you're available to answer that question?
Yeah. And is the question too big or just right for where they are at currently? Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, and I think that that's the thing, is that like, when you hear them, you understand when they say this is enough, without them needing to protect themselves and fight.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think that 90% of the resistances that we have happen because folks didn't hear the small no.
Yeah.
And like, we're screaming too loud, and we're screaming so loud because we're afraid of not being seen.
Well, you know what's really wild as you're saying that, Nahshon, is your hands keep coming up doing that no response, right? And I think how much is the tightness and how much is the pain and how much is the holding and the bracing actually just reflective of how strong the no has had to be that still isn't being heard. And when we actually hear the no, it's like, oh, I don't have to work so hard. And then that pain goes away because I'm not having to constantly be mobilizing and ready and braced. You know, can we hear it smaller, like you're saying?
And I think what is really important to me is, as I am understanding what's happening more and more and more, is that the more awake I become to it, the less I really know. And I know that I don't know, which makes me available to really listen and learn. You know, and I think that, you know, you realize that when horses are tight, they're protecting a weakness. They're protecting a place that isn't strong with with the strongest part of themselves. You know, and like, if you soften, and they see you, then you realize that they're not afraid to be soft for you if you're soft. They're not afraid for you to move their body if you understand when they say that you're getting to the point where it might start hurting. And then that ability to feel safe and relaxed is actually what heals them, not the work. It's not the work at all. It's them not feeling like they need to survive my presence.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think that it's fundamentally changing how this is how I am as a trainer too. And like, I have a young mare that I'm looking to prepare for competition, and you know, and it's been super helpful because, you know, she was a rescue too, but she's really, 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 really lovely, and she's young and her body is not broken. But I can see where she posed the problem, because she was a racehorse and then she was a polo horse, and she's doing dressage now, baby dressage, and learning how to jump. But she gets to this place where her mental capacity for more questions just isn't. And it's really interesting because she'll do her best, and it's real effort, and then you just feel her totally deflate because she's given it all she's got. And she will stop and close her eyes and lower her head and just breathe, and then we'll start back up again. And like, in this way, they teach you how to ask them the questions they're able to answer, which keeps them from hurting themselves. You know?
Yeah.
And so it's a beautiful process that I feel like I'm blossoming into.
Yeah. And I think that's a beautiful thing, that as you're blossoming into that, it helps other humans, the humans that are associated with all these horses, to perhaps be willing to dare to blossom in that direction as well. Because you said something really powerful a few moments ago. You'd said, you know, I don't, you know, something about not wanting them to have to survive your existence. And, you know, and then I go, wow, like, how much of the horse's response is them trying to survive their human's existence or their human's presence. And then there's the shame that comes along with that around, oh God, like what am I doing or not doing that is resulting in my horse having to manage? And then how do I be prepared to work through the feelings that come up with that in order to get to a place where I can soften so that my horse can soften? And that's, I think, the work,
Yeah,
is
yeah,
that
it's real.
self-compassion.
Yeah, it's realizing, it's the people realizing which parts of themselves they have to survive.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, and
yeah.
that's a real thing,
Yes,
you know?
yeah,
It's the people realizing what part of themselves they have to survive. And so
yeah.
I think that it's really important for me to just be like super straight up with people.
Mm,
Like this is not a fantasy.
yeah,
Like this work is not, having a really close relationship with a horse where you can hear them in the ways that you hear them
yeah.
is not absent of boundaries. I mean,
Mhm,
it's a healthy relationship.
mhm,
If you can say no, they can say no. If
yeah.
you can say yes, they can say yes. And if you can't do that, I'm not the one for you.
Mhm,
It's not,
mhm,
it's not working out of this idea of of coming to, you're on one side of the pendulum and running all the way to the other one, where here we learned where there's super force and blah 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 blah, and here we're just like, we're gonna run free in the field with nothing. We're not gonna start there.
yeah.
Right? You have to get a seat, you have to find your breath, you have
Mhm,
to get your muscle memory together, because if we don't, then we're going to create more trauma in this horse out of you running from a really unhealthy situation and swinging all the way over here. Listening
mhm,
to horses is not a place that's absent of boundaries. Horses are masters of boundaries.
mhm.
They're masters of intention. They're masters of intelligence,
Yeah,
of energy following intelligence, and thus clarity,
yeah,
and I think that that's where even in the process of me, I mean, even in the process of me learning how to not have huge anxiety attacks in interviews anymore, like it's understanding that like when I'm not afraid to be seen, I'm clear.
yeah, yes.
When I'm
So
not
what part?
afraid to be
Yeah,
seen, I'm clear.
yeah,
You know, and
yeah.
and and when I'm clear, I'm able to focus, and I can put all of my
Mm,
fortitude in
mhm,
that direction, instead of feeling like I'm in this expanse and I just have to grab for things. Like
yeah,
I mean, and just being in that situation,
yeah,
it exhausts the body,
yeah. Mhm,
you know? And
mm,
so it's understanding, it's having experiences like that, where like a young horse, you're able to see what this creature will be capable of when it matures.
uh-huh,
But you've got to give it time, and
yeah.
you've got to learn how to teach it in such a way that it doesn't feel like it has to protect itself from you.
And that's that thing that came back to what we said earlier. You said something really beautiful. What is it that I'm having to survive against within myself? And then it's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, so what am I not connected to inside of me that I'm
Mm-hmm.
not able to connect to in my horse? And it's like, oh, what is that piece of work? And not to brace against that which I'm protecting within myself, but to really come in with a lot of love and compassion to that thing inside of me that's resulting, in this disconnect. And so there's something really beautiful in that, I think.
And I think the important thing that is, I think the most important thing for me in seeing this, and working with a wide range of riders from like
Mm.
15 to 75,
Yeah.
and a wide range of horses from like yearlings to 22,
Mhm.
you realize you realize that our bodies are really just the product of everything that our brain has decided is permissible.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And 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 how in the process of learning, it's really important to be high achieving, but not get stuck on perfection, because then you don't allow yourself mistakes, and that's the only way that we learn. There cannot be this devotion to innocence. Love doesn't live there. Not real life love. It doesn't live there, because you know, if we're totally innocent, then we haven't grown.
Yeah.
We make I mean, and you know, I'm not saying be like, you know, vindictive or something like that, but like, you know, like, we don't learn without getting hurt sometimes, you
It's a,
know.
it's a paradox. Like you need enough safety to be, you need to feel safe enough to be willing to do the work, but not 100% safe, because then there's nothing to work with, right? And so it's almost like this, we can't have complete innocence. There needs to be a little bit of opening up into the difficulty in order for something to change, you know?
And the you know, and the opposite of the need for innocence is total authenticity.
Right.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
it's not needing to be afraid to allow yourself to be seen.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And that's
You know,
that's uncomfortable. That can be really uncomfortable for folks,
if you
you know?
it can be if they've been taught that they're not enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's, you know, I mean, that's the only way. Or, you know, I mean, and how that shows up in really low achieving people and really, really high achieving people.
Yeah.
It's always this battle against not enough. It's
Yeah.
always this battle of these judgments that we internalize, which then expresses itself in really unhealthy ways, some that are rewarded by society and
Yeah.
some that are punished,
Yeah.
you know.
I talk about like this idea of there's all this kinds of conversations around privilege, and one of the layers of privilege I talk about is coping privilege. And you know, between the underachiever and the overachiever, you know, the one who's over functioning or the one who's under functioning, you know, who has the greater coping privilege. And it all depends, oh, excuse me, it all depends on who's looking at that person, you know,
Yeah.
because the overachiever often flies under the radar because they look like they're doing well, but then they don't get help because they have managed to fool everyone, including themselves, that they're fine, you know. And then you've got the chronic underachiever who may be more visibly challenged or more maybe struggling more obviously and may get services more easily, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're having an easier time, say, than the person who's overachieving. You know, they may both
Right.
be struggling for similar reasons. And then, you know, who's having the easier time? Is it the person who has a house and is, you know, overachieving but is falling apart inside? Or is it the person who's on the street who's not able to get things together, you know, but they're able to access some services? I mean, both are technically the same person, you know, to some degree, right? And so it's kind of like on the inside, and then not talking about other layers of privilege in terms of economic privilege and so on and so forth. But I mean, if we just look at
Yeah.
the coping capacity, it's really challenging to kind of go, okay, well, you're doing okay and you're not. And it's like, well, actually, they're both struggling. So how do
Deeply.
we support
Yeah.
deeply, right? It just, one might have more economic privilege, certainly, but how much of that economic privilege also reflects the overfunctioning, right? And
Right.
so it's just, right, like, I don't know. And there's lots of layers and determinants of health and social justice components to that, but just the coping itself is really interesting, you know.
And I think that, you know, that's where this question between equality and equity really comes in.
Yeah, totally.
Right? Like,
Mhm.
if like, because like, it's an inequitable process for, you know, if we have this chronic overachiever and this chronic underachiever, if we're working towards equality, it's the overachiever who's actually being gypped.
Right.
You know, they're not getting what they need because they can afford to hide what is going on.
Right. So who's got the
And
greater coping privilege? Yeah, exactly.
if it was an equitable thing, it would be like, you know what, like, you know, I don't care what you have and what you don't. Like, you need to stand on 2 books to look over the fence. You need to stand on 5 books to look over the fence. We can
Yeah.
both look over the fence.
Yes.
You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Totally.
Instead of like both having 2 books and one being able to see over the fence, and we're working from an equality idea, both one
Yeah.
able to see over the fence and one their heads not even touching the line.
Totally. Yeah.
You know, I mean, and
Yeah.
the thing is that how then how then it manifests, and this is where it's really interesting in people then who are not able to have support structures,
Yeah.
using horses as a coping mechanism
Yeah.
and bringing all of that unfinished stuff everywhere else to the life of this horse, who is now having anxiety because they can't really listen to the person, because they actually hear everything that's being said.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know what I'm saying? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I want you to do this, but this question is coming from 10 years back.
Yeah.
Like, you're protecting yourself from me, the horse is saying, because of what somebody did to you as a kid. Like,
Yeah.
let's really dig deep, you know, because
Mm-hmm.
and this is what this is and this is the power of not needing the work to be a fairy tale.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's
Yeah.
actually healthy,
Mm-hmm.
you know, for the person to really begin to I mean, I have a client that I was working with, she and her husband, and they're in Minnesota, and we were doing our remote lesson, and I just had this pain in my shoulder. And I said, what is going on in your right shoulder? It was way back from when this person was a kid, and the mom hired somebody to take care of their horses, and totally felt gypped because of she wasn't having responsive. And like, this was that that really chip on their shoulder was how they had learned to get enough of themselves to achieve stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it was totally like, and she and it's like, well, this is something that needs attention, like, and like,
Mm-hmm.
we brought that up, and like, now they're getting work done, they're seeing a therapist and working with
Mm-hmm.
all of that stuff, but this is the work that the horses bring up. And as soon as she let that out, her horse just totally let down,
Mm-hmm.
just totally, it was just like, thank God,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that in not needing to be everything all the time for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
you learn to be you learn to meet people where they're at, because you can
Mm-hmm.
hear them, and then
Mm-hmm.
you can just let them know, like with the
Yeah.
horses, like, this is
Yeah.
something that I can do, or this is something that I can't, or like like if you're not willing to change this,
Yeah.
no matter what I do to your horse, I'm not helping your horse. So like, is this something that you want to continue doing?
Yeah.
You know? And
Yeah.
so I think just knowing what I have to offer, and and not allowing not allowing that to be made into magic, you know, when it's
Mm-hmm.
just, it really is just deep listening
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
trusting yourself, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
like, that's where I do my best work,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
It's it,
know?
it's like there's a quote by Adyashanti that I always butcher, but my paraphrase of it is that I think it starts off with like um, something to the effect of like healing and growth are destructive processes, or enlightenment is a destructive process, right? And it's not about, oh, I forget something about the eradication. It's about the eradication of untruth, right? And so it's a
Mhm.
crumbling of that, of the facades and
Of
and
the
the illusions,
illusions. Yeah.
right? And so it's like, so healing and growth as my paraphrase of Adyashanti is that they're not sexy processes, right? They're uncomfortable, right? They're not always easy. And so growth is not always a sexy thing, right? But it's an important thing. And that's that idea of coming out of innocence into, hey, vulnerability. It's like, how do we move towards? And then I think to myself, the questions that you asked are, well, how do we move towards that in a way that the question is tolerable? Like, and we ask the question of moving towards the vulnerability out of innocence in a way that is within that capacity, right? Because I always hear about, like, how do we get the yes and move in that direction for the horse? And I'm like, it's the same for the person too. What's that first step
Yeah.
that's a yes in that direction, you know?
So my niece, both of my nieces, we usually have Monday dinner. And there's 6 and 3.
Right.
And one time the 6-year-old, she just turned 6. She was 5 or 4. She said, Uncle, she goes, she asked me, she goes, she asked me, we were walking through the field here at the farm. She goes, what is your superpower?
Yeah.
And I said, I think that my superpower is being able to just listen well. And I said, and what is your superpower? And she said, my superpower is information. And I said, what does that? And I said, so how is that helpful? And she goes, well, I've been thinking. She goes, and she said something to the effect of, like, if you don't understand a question, it's not usually the whole question that you don't understand. It's just a piece of the question. And if you can take the question apart enough to figure out what piece is missing, you find the answer. I mean, in that, from a 5-year-old, just broke down the whole process. It's not everything that's wrong.
Yeah.
Ever. Because they're here. You know, something's right. Yeah. It's not everything that's wrong. Yeah. And if we can undo and see where the missing piece of the puzzle is, then we have this really beautiful opportunity to either fix or understand. And like, if you fix it, you understand why the hole is there, and you leave the choice of the one who has the hole to put the piece back in its place. If you fix it, you put the piece back in its place.
Right.
And then it stops being about them.
Yeah.
And it's about you.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And it's like, so we've gotten to this place. And is it valuable enough for you to now stop living in this dysfunction? Or have you gained so much from it that you can't see yourself without it? And as long as it's your choice, what can I do? Yeah.
Yeah. But then have a realistic expectation then of what is expected of the horse, right? If you're wanting to stay
of me,
that's it. Exactly.
As a teacher.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, what's expected of me? Because, like, if we have come to this place where you have found that this is where the energy is stuck, and you know who it is and where it came from, and you decide that it's still valuable, then understand that this is what is gonna always be. And if it's your choice, you're free.
Yeah.
You're free. And the thing that's so important to me is then being able to understand that, like, freedom is always a running away from not being free.
Right.
It's a pathology.
Right.
It's a meditation on the light. Right? It's not the path where you see the sun. You know what I'm saying? We're focusing on the light, but we're not focusing on where it's coming from. That's the path. That's the unsexy part.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the unsexy part. Are you willing to walk down the path to the source of the light?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or are you are you okay stuck in the pathology and being in love with the light?
Yeah.
Those are our only two choices when we really think down to it.
Yeah.
You know, love the light or become it.
Yeah. It reminds me of a quote from Peter Levine, who used to say, and he has said this a few times, I think it's something to the effect of longing is the feeling that you're longing for. It's not the thing itself, it's the longing for it. And that becomes the new outcome, as opposed to going for the thing itself that was actually wanted. And now it just becomes that we're jonesing for the,
We're addicted. We're
we're addicted
addicted
to the longing, not
to
actually having
longing.
the thing filled. Like the
Right,
fulfillment is not what actually
right,
happens. I'm so used to not getting the thing fulfilled that I've now become used to just longing for the thing, and that becomes my functionality.
right.
And so I go, wow, like, and that's fine. What I'm hearing you say is like, hey, that's cool if that's where you're at. Then have a realistic expectation of yourself, of the horse, and of me as the teacher, that that's cool if that's where you're at and that's where you want to be. And there are other approaches and methods maybe that will help working from that place forward, but that's not, where we're at right now. Here's what I can offer.
That's
Yeah.
right. And like,
Mhm.
I can't do that.
That piece of work.
I'm not interested in chasing a high.
Mhm.
I'm not. I'm not. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm interested in moving beyond pathology.
Mhm. Mhm.
You know, I
Mhm.
want to see the power. I want to see the power that lay in my hands with a new challenge,
Mhm.
instead of saying, like, I know how to do this and it's super reproducible, but I can't grow.
Yeah.
I'm a young man. I don't want to get stuck there yet.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel, I can't believe that all of this is happening, but I don't, but like, I feel like I'm just starting.
Yeah.
There's all of this stuff, and there's all of these horses that come through, and there's all of these really wonderful things that happen, but it's like, I can't end there because I still have more time.
Mhm.
I have time. And like, the more time I have, the more helpful I am if I don't get stuck depending on needing to do it a certain way.
Mhm.
One person who I really, really respect, we were on a panel together, Dr. Garrett Houshman. He told me, he said, get the hardest horses you can find because it's going to make you really, really helpful.
Mhm.
And it didn't make sense until all of this started to happen. I
Right.
thought I had made a terrible, terrible mistake
Yeah.
in listening to him,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm.
And like, it turns out that like, the most difficult horses are the most difficult horses because they're not the ones that are heard.
Yeah.
They're the
Precisely.
ones, they're the ones that say no. They're the
Yeah.
ones that say what you're doing doesn't feel good. Stop it.
Mhm.
They're the ones that are saying, okay, um, I'm gonna keep my safe space. And part of my safe space is putting you out of it.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, these are all the things that the horses tell you when you allow them to tell the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And understanding that, like, they do want to be with people that want to be with them.
Mhm.
They don't want, these horses don't want things done to them. And if
Yeah.
you are with them in the ways that they don't have to protect themselves from you, you can do whatever you want with them, as long as they're capable of answering that question. They'll give you their life if you
Mhm.
don't try to take it away.
Mhm. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's love.
Yeah.
That's truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I mean, and then you begin to see, like, why is this horse in your life? I mean, and it's kind of like people, you have new experiences, you travel, you see new places, and it's like you come back home and there are just some people that don't fit in your life anymore. You're
Yeah.
different. You're a different person,
Yeah.
you know? And
Yeah.
like, that's what this is like. It's like, it's like they're telling you that the world is this much bigger, and if you listen, you'll find more of yourself in it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
what a gift.
Yeah. Yeah. And that means coming out of whatever contraction and bracing that we're in into a bit more expansion or aliveness or openness. And it's that process from going from the expansion or the contraction into the expansion. That's
Yeah.
always where there's the fear originally
Yeah.
is, it's like I'm bracing against that. I'm blocking that. And yet when we're able to eventually ease into, in a titrated, tolerable way, into that expansion, then like, oh my gosh, how much is different. For the
Yeah.
human and for the horse when that
And I
happens.
think that for both, the fear is there, but I
Yeah.
think that for in a trauma situation, in a
Mm-hmm.
working out of like things in the future, but things in the future, acting like you responding to the thing in the future or the present, like a
Yeah.
bad thing that's happening in the past. Like, I think that the fear is always there, good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, but I think the difference between growth and learning and enlightenment or waking up and staying asleep is what we do with being afraid, because like that's the cultural construct. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are all of the things that we've been taught to protect ourselves from. So
Right.
are we gonna is it valuable, is it so valuable to keep holding on to that place because we believe the person or the thing or the experience that taught us that holding on is our only survivable way through this space? Or are we gonna take the challenge? And like, this is what you said, that opening up, like for me in this work, like that opening up is the unlearning of being afraid.
Mm-hmm.
The fear is still there, and the possibility to be hurt is still there.
Mm-hmm.
But like, do I believe in myself enough to not stay stuck in the closeness and hope that good will happen to me in the future? Or do I say that the future is right now,
Mm-hmm.
and something good can happen to me right now if I stop holding on the need to hoping that it will happen later, because I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
The stories we tell ourselves,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I wrestle with those things every day for myself.
Yeah. It's a beautiful distinction that you're making between fear and afraid. It's almost like the fear of the fear. Fear is going to be there, but
It's gonna be there.
can we learn to be okay with being with the fear as opposed to being afraid of the fear? Now we've added a layer to the layer, and so
Yeah. Do we survive it, or do we
yeah.
create from it?
Yeah.
Because in my work, like, these are horses that the vets say need to be put down.
Yeah.
That's the fear of, and that's working out of everything that we know. And I'm like, well, there's a whole lot still that we don't know. So can we work out of there and see? And maybe yes, and maybe no. But what the beautiful thing about it is that now that the vets and are seeing what is possible, like we're having conversations about processes.
Yeah.
Like, just because it's not in the book doesn't mean it has to be an unknown if you're curious.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And
Are
it's that
you willing?
curiosity. Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, that's the enlightenment.
Mm-hmm.
Are you awake enough to stay awake?
Yeah.
Are you awake enough to see? Are you awake enough to know yourself so much that you know that you don't know? That's the key for me.
Yeah.
That's the power. And then from there, there's so much to be felt.
Yeah.
And there's so much to be, and you learn to love yourself more because you trust yourself in feeling what you're feeling.
Yeah.
And that's where the healing happens. That's the opening of the heart.
Uh-huh.
That's the not being afraid to be seen. And so being clear and saying that, like, and really understanding, like, I've outgrown this.
Yeah.
And it's time for the next step.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to float away, and I didn't have to get my fix. And I'm healthy, and I'm in myself, because that's the thing that it always comes down to when I'm dealing with trauma in students, particularly. The bad thing happened because they were taught by their teachers not to trust themselves. I don't want anybody to trust me in a lesson more than they trust themselves. They know. And with me keeping myself low, I'm able to see everything that's going on, because they don't feel like they have to please me. It's not a performance, it's an education.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think that makes it, that's the especially important piece, Nahshon, I think, is the teacher in this, who's always perpetually a student as well. And I say that for me, including, right? We're all perpetually students and doing our work, ideally, is as the teacher being committed to that path of also being humble enough to being willing to listen. Like you said earlier, the ego, right? Making sure the ego is in check, because if I come into the work from this place of being all-knowing or being an expert or being whatever, I need to know the answers. And how many people get drawn into horsemanship? How many people self-select into their career because there's something that is reinforcing about that? It's like, you know what I mean? And so if I go into my career because I like to know the answers or feel like I know the solutions or I can fix, and that's what's driving me to come from this place of not fixing, of not being the expert, of being able to quiet that ego in me, because there's something in that feels protective. There's something safe in that for me, that if I get to know the answers, then I avoid something else, you know,
or I have power over
or I have
another.
power over, right? Because power was had over me. So now I finally get to be the one to have power over, right? And so if we're keeping that stuff in check, that also holds the conditions for someone to come out of being not so afraid of their fear, because it's like, oh gosh, I need to know that I can trust the human who's holding this space for me and my horse, that they're not going to abuse or be harmful and send me back into my contraction to protect myself,
or throw me away, throw me away when I come in, when I present a situation that they don't know the answer to. And and this is the thing, and you hit on it. The ego is a trauma response.
Of course it is. Of course.
You know?
And
I think that is the number one. And I think that's why I love horses so much, because they see you. And they see me, and they're teaching me how to see more and more and more and more and more. You can feel energy when you trust what you're feeling. It's not an abstraction. You know? When you have that little flash of insight and about this situation, and you don't, and it's not even a judgment, it's just something that says take note. It's just a quote bubble about this situation in time. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, when you allow yourself, when you allow yourself that, when you realize how slippery a slope it is to become proficient at it, at this work, and to have people reinforcing that you're proficient at it, like that's the, it becomes a really slippery slope to not make the choice to get lost in the pathology of freedom, liberation, or freedom, non-freedom, and getting addicted to the light instead of loving the sun and continuing to walk towards the sun. And I think that for me as a teacher, the best thing that I can do for my students is for the regular students that I have, like on a weekly or a monthly basis, and then the people who've invited me to come and teach, is to not stay in love, and to not be addicted to the light. but to keep walking towards the sun.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because that's the difference between the lamp illuminating the room or the sun illuminating the day. I want to move towards the illumination of the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I know that as long as I stay here and keep walking my road, that I can give more people something that will be helpful, even though all of it may be different.
Yeah.
And if I do that, then I know that I'm making life better. And I feel like I'm not wasting this gift of time on earth.
Yeah.
Because it's a very deep thing for me to not feel like I need people to feel like to not allow myself to feel like I have to have people to perform for me to get my attention. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If
Or
I
that
can help you, I will. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I just don't want to lose the thing you just said there. And that you feel that you don't need to perform for them, right? As a teacher, because so often I think where the ego gets into play and our trauma responses get into play is I need to be in power. I need to be in control. I need to look like the expert. I need to have X, Y, and Z happen for you to love me or for you to like me to maintain
I need to
something.
be the guru.
I need to be the guru, right? And I was hoping
Yeah.
we get to guru culture today because it's such a timely topic right now. And
let's do it.
All right, let's go there, my friend. Let's absolutely go into guru culture because this is a big thing. And there's a real important thing. And this is a nuance that I think is so essential. Guru culture, again, is stemmed in trauma.
It is
Right?
on both
100%
ends.
on
On
both
both
ends.
ends.
Yes, the person who's the guru and the person who are attracted to the guru there's a trauma response in all of that. And there's such a risk. And it means that, this is going to sound super hokey, and I don't know if this is from Spider-Man or somewhere else, but with great power comes great responsibility, right? And I forget where that is. But like that idea that if you're going to be in a position of authority as a professional, for instance, there automatically, by virtue of that, is a power differential. As much as you try to decrease that differential and make it a flat hierarchy, like it or not, someone is coming to you for something you have to offer that automatically creates a differential. Therefore,
it makes you more in a way. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And because they're coming to you, you're not going to them and reciprocally. It's not a friendship. It's they're coming to you for help with something. It behooves the person who is the professional to really be walking that talk around, okay, am I working on my trauma? Am I recognizing what has led me into this profession in the first place? What's driving me to be here, and what is motivating how I interact, when and how, because that's my own stuff. And if I'm not owning that to a really nuanced degree, everyone's going to be at a different place with this. But if I'm not owning that, then I am putting others at risk of reenactment of a very familiar trauma pattern just so that I can get some need met that really should not be met there. That's an inappropriate place to get that need met. And so it's
just because we're able to meet it there doesn't mean we should allow it to happen.
That's the other thing, right? At what layer is it happening? And because I go, wow, like there's the reenactment of, oh, well, I had this happen. Now I get to be the one who has this. We're in it for the wrong reasons. And a supervisor of mine many years ago told me this when I embarked on my profession. He said this to our whole class, and it always stayed with me. He said, the reason that led you into your chosen profession, ideally, should not be the reason that keeps you there. So maybe it is your trauma response and patterning that led you into wanting to become a psychotherapist because, hey, or any kind of profession where we're helping in some way, in some sort of relational interface. Often that's driven by the wounded healer phenomenon, right? There's this place of our own wounding that leads us to that, but that's not the reason why we're staying in the profession, because then we're going to be at risk of burnout, harming other people, harming ourselves, because what's driving it is the attempt at trying to resolve our own history. And if we haven't addressed that history, then we're just going to keep playing it out in our professional selves.
Right.
And, right. And so it's like, oh, so it really is an essential that we kind of own and walk our talk as best as we can to prevent something like guru culture from being the phenomenon with which people are attracted to us for.
Right.
Right.
And I think that that's where I was saying that that's where the need for perfection fucks everything up.
Right. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
I need it to look a certain way. And if it
that's
doesn't, then
exactly
there's a
right.
and then I'm going to resort to
And
abusive tactics,
then
or I'm going to resort to,
and this is where the addiction to innocence also comes in.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
like it didn't make, I mean, like it makes very clear sense in this situation. And then, you know, and and as you were saying that, I was looking at like what was it that brought me into this work? And for me, after I had come back from my travels abroad, I swore I was never going to work with people and horses ever again.
Right.
I was going to have my own horse, and I had my job, and I had my retirement, and I had really good benefits and all of this stuff. And people came to me for help.
Yeah.
People were coming to me for help.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't really care for the people, but the horses are suffering greatly.
Right.
And it's been my love for horses that has really opened my heart to people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so this whole, like last year I did Warwick's thing with you and the others in San Antonio, and a month before that I was in Kentucky at another one. And I was just like, you know what, like I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what all of this means. I'm not sure where the invitation came from, but let's see.
Yeah.
Let's try.
Yeah.
I was scared out of my mind. Out of my mind.
Yeah.
You know, I was scared out of my mind. Nobody there looked like me. Everybody was, and I was just like, let's see if it's possible for us to create a world that's a little bit closer to what we all need.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see if it's possible.
Yes.
And I'm so thankful that it turned out to be.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I'm so grateful that everybody made the choice to stretch and to really engage with each other. And how then I was like, well, shit, maybe this is a real thing. Maybe the world is changing for the better in a way, and maybe I can be a catalyst. Hey, who wants me to come teach? All of these people wanted me to come. I'm just, and I'm so grateful because it lets me know that it's only true if it's truly an experiment. If we truly don't know, we are offering the best of ourselves in these moments, and we're seeing what doors open up, and who is able to stop being a doormat and is allowed to stand up and walk through that door. You know what I'm saying? It's so glorious, and it's so scary.
Yeah.
It's so scary. And it's not just healing that is not sexy. It's creating too.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
It is scary.
Yeah.
I mean, and really realizing that all these people that I'm going to teach all over the place, they don't have the same points of reference of me here. I have to open up. That's not the truth. It's not true everywhere, which means it's a little bit further from the truth than I want to be. But you don't know until you do. You know?
But this comes back. Yeah, sorry, go
Sorry, go
ahead.
ahead, go ahead.
Yeah,
And then
no,
there are just then there are just things that you have to let go of. That's all I was gonna say.
yeah, sweet. Well, and this is it. And so I think that's a really great segue, because I think, and what people are going to be willing or prepared or ready to let go of depends a lot. Again, we come back to that idea of privilege again, right? And so, right, because I heard you say that, and we talked about that in Texas as well, is, when you're the more marginalized an individual is, the more marginalized, and I'm not just talking about human marginalization, but
Yeah.
even
You've been made
equines.
to be. Yeah.
Right.
The more
Yeah.
marginalized you've been made to be.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. So because of the conditions, because of the environment being that it supports a particular individual or a particular way of being over others. And that becomes the dominant way in society that is acceptable or that has been supported. Horses are the same thing. We talk about that in my EQUUSOMA training. It's like, okay, if we're going to come at this from like a trauma-informed perspective, part of that trauma-informed awareness is, okay, different organisms, human or equine, are going to have different stacked variables that make it harder to say yes in a particular circumstance or come out of the contraction into more expansion because they've had more variables stacked against them. And so I
Right.
remember we talked in Texas, it's like, hey, you know what, you're right. You coming out of fear into more interviews, for instance, or more opportunities to do stuff with humans. And I hear you go, yeah, I didn't really, like humans. And I go, yeah, fair enough. I mean, if you're on the receiving end of marginalization, discrimination, et cetera, as a result of being part of different identity groups, then yeah, it's going to be an even harder ask or an even bigger ask to come out of that,
Yeah.
into more
Yeah.
openness. And then it's like, that is just a legitimate thing. And some horses are like that. Some horses, by virtue of their breeding and their industry or their profession that was selected by their breeding or their owners or what have you, are going to have different variables stacked against them compared to other horses. And it's similar,
Yeah.
right? So that coming
Yeah.
out of no into a yes may be harder for some organisms as a result of those additional variables, right? And
Yeah.
so for you being willing to kind of move away and go, okay, I'm not going to stay in my fear. I am going to allow myself to be vulnerable and create and show up and go, I have no idea. That is, to me, that's really inspiring, because it's opening up beyond. I mean, it's already hard to come out of contraction into expansion, and that already requires a certain amount of courage and willingness to titrate into that sort of unfolding or that blossoming, to use a word you used a while ago. And for you to be doing it, I think, is just so remarkable, given those extra layers, and that willingness to
Yeah.
do. Mhm.
And I think that, but I think that I think that it's also really important
Yeah.
to understand, for me to understand, try and understand
Mhm.
what people see when they see me.
Yeah.
I think that beyond everything else that appears, like, they also hear someone who is deeply in touch with his own heart,
Yeah. Mhm.
one who really is really trying to see himself in others as much as possible so that he can understand,
Yeah.
and that out of that understanding, out of that wanting to understand, out of that working to understand,
Yeah.
is the practice of being in love with life, which I
Mhm.
think is taking responsibility for your place in the earth.
Mhm.
You know, I don't
Mhm.
think that, I think that, I think that my grandma always told me that boredom is a lack of gratitude.
Mm.
And so all of this is just realizing and trying to embody a thankful existence.
Mhm.
And I can't do that with the gifts that heaven has given me without helping other people.
Yeah.
Is it a choice that if I could, I would make it be different? Yeah. But the thing is that, like, you then begin to understand that people are each other's gifts of grace. And the lack of gratitude, the boredom in life comes with not trying to meet a need if you can meet it in a healthy way. You know what I'm saying? And so this is how I think horses are sculpting me into a human being,
right,
and getting me out of tribalism. And I was talking to my mom this morning. I said, Mommy, I said, I wish more people were more like horses, because horses don't do things for no reason. And then I thought about it, and I realized that people only do things for no reason when you're not listening. There's always a reason. What they did didn't just come out of nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I'm not afraid of it, and I think that that's the thing, if I'm not afraid of it, if I don't feel like I have to protect myself from it, you see that it's the hurt of somebody that put the hurt in them that they tried to hurt you with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean they're not accountable for their actions. It just means that vengeance isn't necessary.
Yeah.
Accountability, yes.
Yes.
Vengeance, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so it's coming on to it's turning into a really incredible space, and with the folks being so keen on me coming and teaching, you know, like, and just wanting to share space with me. It really is helping me see that, like, we don't have to perpetuate the dysfunction that we've inherited if we choose not to. But we have to also, to make that happen, we have to offer the best of ourselves. We have to offer the best of ourselves. Because if we don't, then we're perpetuating it no matter what.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we create good soil, and we plant flowers, and we love them, and we realize that the blossom only blooms because the roots are rooted deeply. It's hard work, every choice that we make, you know?
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's something else.
Yeah. And I think it is really a mix of the personal and the systemic, right? Like you can tend, like you said, you can tend to the flowers in your garden and try to support them to grow. And if the garden soil is contaminated because of environmental conditions, it's never just an inside job, I think, is what I think is also essential to name here, because it's really easy to go, well, you know, you just need to change your attitude and it'll be lovely. And I'm like, well, that's where we get into inspiration porn. It's like, hey, you're up against all these awful conditions, but look how wonderful you are being. And like, no, that's not an absolution to not be dealing with the conditions. We all need to be doing something here, because it's really easy to point the finger and go, wow, you're so inspiring. Look at all these things you've overcome. And then in the meantime, the conditions are still shitty, right? And
we're going back
right?
to equity here.
That's right.
Not
We're looking at the
equality,
two.
but we're
No,
looking
the
at equity here. Like, you
Yeah.
have 2 books, I need 5 to see
Yeah,
over
that's
the
right.
same fence.
Totally.
You know? And
Yeah.
so I think that that's the important thing too, is exceptionalism.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, I've had some really wonderful opportunities, but I'm also very gifted, and I know that. You know what I'm saying? And like, it's not fair to say that, like, Nahshon did it, like everybody can
Therefore,
do it.
yeah, that's right.
You know, like, that's not fair. That's not just.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah,
so there's all
exactly.
of these things, but I also understand how important it is for those photographs of me in the presence of all of the other presenters, how important that is for kids to see and parents to see that this is possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, this is possible.
Yeah.
And how care and consideration should not be a political act of resistance. Seeing somebody should not be political.
Yeah. Yeah.
But since it is,
yeah,
I'm saying yes.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Because you can, you know,
because
you
I
can.
can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I can. And just because I'm walking the path to the sun does not mean that there is not this constant conversation about pathology in my heart.
Yeah.
Always, always, always.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But the thing is that representation matters. And that, you know, the folks who say that it doesn't means that they don't need that consideration.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they can look and see themselves wherever they look.
Yeah.
And everybody doesn't have, and it's not an affront, and it's not a attack. It's just the truth.
Reminds me of a quote, I forget who said it, but the idea of if you can play devil's advocate, it's probably because you're not personally affected by the circumstances, you know. And
the thing is that I think that though there has to be a greater conversation between, it has to move beyond problems and solutions and has to really focus on causation. What was the intent? What is the heart of what we're talking about? Because if we can go to the heart, we can find the answer.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's a valuable conversation. This you. Okay, I'm taking responsibility for my part in trying to make it better. I'm showing up. I have the invitations. I'm saying yes. I'm nearly pissing my pants on stage. I'm going into full-blown anxiety attacks, and all I can find is a song. I can find is a song.
Yeah. And honestly,
but
Nahshon,
I'm here.
that was beautiful.
But I'm here.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and you realize I'm really understanding that people will change if they feel safe enough to feel something.
Yeah.
They will change if they feel safe enough to feel something. And it goes back to feeling safe enough to trust yourself in a moment. You know? Like, and it's like, and then you begin to see, and because you begin to see, you begin to get clear.
Yeah.
And you realize, kind of like our first conversation, where my head was just rocked. My head was just rocked. I was just like, Nahshon, what is going on?
Yeah.
Like, it's not healthy for you to end a conversation and be exhausted for 5 days. Like, you're working out of survival. Something has to change because this is not a sustainable plan. What have you learned to be afraid of in this situation, and why is it valuable?
Yeah.
You know, that's my work.
And
that's my work with my horses.
Yeah.
That's my work with my horses.
That's it.
What are you afraid of, buddy?
Yeah.
And why is it valuable? Because it will hurt. Will it actually hurt, or do you just believe it will hurt?
Because it
I
has
don't
before.
know. It's been conditioned. I don't know. Well,
Uh-huh.
how about if I have you step on a different surface? And then you get past all of these, and I mean, some people are going to be really upset with me, but then you realize, like, you like, I have this horse Mateo, and you have people who swear by barefoot horses and all of this stuff. It's like, just let's not need to be right, and if we love them, do what's best.
Yeah.
If he doesn't have shoes on his feet, he can't try to answer my question. Like, let's stop needing to prove points and just love.
Mm-hmm.
I have horses that have shoes because they need them. I have horses that don't have them because they don't need them. I've taken them off and their nutrition is good, and it still doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
People need different insoles. Some people can wear sandals all the time. You know what I'm saying? It's just,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, it's all of these things. And if we don't take our need to always be at war into the things where we are supposed to find peace, then so much will change.
But it's the black and white thinking, Nahshon. That is, again, the trauma response. If we're
It is
polarized into camps, right? The black and white as opposed to the shades of gray. We've talked about that in previous conversations. You know, is I need to be right, or I'm going to find myself, I'm going to swing all the way in this direction because anything towards that direction is therefore wrong or bad. And that's a safety trauma response. It's like, oh, I can't find the mid-range of the shades of gray because this is where I find my safety. You
And
know.
yeah, and it's the difference between being and doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
the difference between being and doing.
Yeah.
You rarely find peace doing anything because it's always found it's always being searched for in something outside of yourself.
Yeah.
There's no stillness.
Yeah.
There's no stillness. There's no anchor.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get so stuck because there's information coming in from everywhere. And the only thing that matters is what other people say.
Yeah.
And what other people think. And then we have horses that don't know what the fuck to do because there's no consistency. This person says shoes, this person says this person says that. What do you say? Does it make sense? How does it feel?
Mm-hmm.
How does it feel?
Mm-hmm.
Does it feel like you're possible inside of this space?
Yeah. We're back to
Does
that
it
felt
feel,
sense. Yeah.
does it feel like you're safe enough to try? Is it okay to make a mistake
Mm-hmm.
and not judge yourself as inadequate?
But that's where it comes back, Nahshon, to you and other people who are in a professional capacity or a teaching role or a leader role to really be doing that work. When you showed up in Texas and you came on stage and you sang, there was something so anti-guru culture in that I thought was just absolutely freaking, and I know you did, I know why that happened, right? And you know, it's you had said previously, I think it was our last conversation around, that was what you could come up with to help regulate yourself because of the
Yeah,
panic of
yeah.
being in
I
front of
was
all
in
these.
I was in a full-blown panic attack up there. Yeah.
100%. But your willingness to be vulnerable and to sing was, like I said, the complete antithesis of the grandiosity, grandstanding, look at me kind of thing that comes with guru culture. That when you were able to kind of just allow yourself to do the scary thing, which in front of a sea of white bodies, I could only imagine, but you allowed yourself to be vulnerable and you sang. A lot of people were in tears. I know I was in tears. And there was something in that immediately was like, when you free yourself up to be vulnerable, it frees other people up to be vulnerable too. And that is the essence of anti-guru culture is, am I doing enough
That
of my
is the
work?
teacher.
Right? That is
That's the
it.
teacher.
That is it.
That's the teacher.
Yeah.
That's the teacher.
That's it.
That is a teacher. And
Mhm.
beyond and beyond and beyond and beyond and beyond.
Yeah.
You know, beyond all of that, it was me trusting people to recognize what was real in me. which was outside of everything else that that life has said is not us. There is this, when you're not addicted to the light, you see the light. You see the light. You see the light in everything, because we can only see then what we are. And that's the key. Like if you're on the path, you're gonna meet other people on the path that you see yourself inside of, and they see themselves inside of you. And and it's in places like this where judgment is laid down, and like you're just there for each other. You're there for each other in your fear and in your strength and in your weakness and in your confidence and in yourself. And like I did that because that's what I do to my horses. When I have a horse that loses their shit, I sing them a song. I sing them a song because it makes me feel safe. It makes me breathe. It makes me slow down. It slows my heart down. It slows my brain waves down. I can feel myself. It allows me to recalibrate. And I think that's the whole art of this teaching thing and my work. It's like, if I reach my hand out and you reach your hand back, then we can walk together. No matter who you are, and no matter who you've been taught you aren't. Like, being enough means you feel safe enough to be seen, and so you're clear. And what comes out of that clarity is authenticity, and it is often filled with a bunch of broken pieces being offered for me to put back together. Okay, my job, Sarah, and the more recognition I get, the more I think it's important for people to know my job is not to float in the clouds. My job is to dig in the dirt. It's a treasure hunt. It's not an escape from, it's a diving deep, 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 deep down into. You know what I'm saying? It's a diving down into that space where I can say, like, this is where I'm really strong, and this is where I'm really weak. And if you want me to still help you in a place that I'm not really strong, just know that there are some lessons where you'll have to wait until next time we meet to find an answer. You know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna throw you away. I'm not gonna throw you away if you're willing to do the work. But I'm also not gonna let you waste my time. You know? Like it's a I don't mind struggling. I do mind squandering.
Right.
You know?
It's there's something in all of this. I'm reminded of that quote by Rilke, who said, learning to love the questions. And can we, as professionals in an equation, learn to love the questions? Like you said, it's not just digging in the dirt of other people's gardens, it's digging in your dirt of your own garden, and being willing to work in your own garden before you are going to go and help someone else or their horses with their garden, so to speak. It's so much easier to just be a swooping in, fix it kind of person, but we haven't dealt with our own garden, And
well, when you fix it, you feel like you have to force time.
That's it too.
You feel like you have to force time. And if it doesn't fit in the space that time can be forced into, then there's no possibility. That's all expectation.
And right. And it's driven by that need. I need you to get better so I feel good about it. This is about,
Yeah,
again, dealing with what is the reason that drove us into this work in the first
right.
place. If I need an outcome by a particular time, whether I'm the owner or I'm the trainer or I'm the professional or whatever the scope of practice of the professional is, what is coming up in me around needing to meet some sort of expectation of others to be seen as good enough? And can I love the questions? I can only love the questions and be curious if I'm able to drop that urgency around time. But that urgency, again, like we talked about at the summit, right? That's can be a trauma response. Not everything that's urgent is an emergency. And so how do we hang out with, oh, right, what is driving this urgency in me
What am
to
I
get it
feeling?
right? What is coming back for
Yeah.
me that's making me need to get it done by a certain time or to get a particular response? And then that's resulting in me increasing force or increasing something to get the response, because if I allow it to take the time that it takes, if I allow it to allow myself to love the questions and be curious and be humble enough to not know the answer today in this moment, then I'm driving it from me. It's my need, my sense of inadequacy or my need for approval that's driving it as a professional.
And I think that in that space, I always come back to trying to explain to people the futility of trying to pedestal me when they try.
Yeah.
My job is not to be the answer for people.
Yeah.
I am not your answer.
Mm-hmm.
My job is to help you figure out that you're your answer.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what horses have done for me.
Yeah.
My horses have taught me that I'm my answer, and
Yeah.
the choices that I make therefrom depends upon that it determines the world I live inside of. I'm so grateful for the opportunities that this work is affording me, but I think that it's really important. I think it's really important that it's important for me to not lose myself in the attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That
You
humility is so
know,
essential. Yeah. Because it's so easy to get pedestalized, if we can turn that into a word. It's so
it,
easy.
it,
And then how do
it
we,
is. And
yeah.
it's like, and
Mhm.
it's like, and it's like, and it's like, and I think the work for me is moving into the space that I'm moving into and all
Mhm.
that life is offering me,
Mhm.
and still and having the courage to say yes, because I could say no and stay
Yeah.
home
Yeah.
and work with my horses and my groups of people. I mean, and I think that what makes me feel so good is that I tell my regular clients, I tell my regular students that, hey, like, this is what it's going to be. My schedule is going to be this. I tried to schedule everything like the first weekend of each month so that like nobody misses much. And they're all just like, like, we're super proud of you. We're super thankful that this is happening, and we will do whatever we need to do to make your schedule work.
Yeah.
Like, that's love.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think, and you don't understand love outside of relationship with others. You just don't.
Mhm.
It's a practice between things.
Mhm.
And that's where, and that's where those internal or external locuses of control come
Yeah.
in relationship to other people.
Yeah. Well, and in relationship to the different aspects of ourselves as well.
Exactly right.
Right.
The
Yeah.
relationship to the, and Chaslo
Mhm.
Mislos, he goes, he wrote a poem when he goes, there are many people living inside of me,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And so I think that that's where I am right now.
Yeah.
My life, it has changed in ways I didn't think were possible.
Mm.
And it was, and it's happened because there are a lot of people with horses like my horses, and they
Yeah.
see what's possible. you know, I didn't spend a shit ton of money on my horses. They don't have enviable bloodlines. Half of them are really beautiful movers, but when they're not afraid, it's
Yeah.
that afraid part,
Yeah.
you know? And so it's like, what happens when we stop running from our own mistakes? And it's like, as these horses get better, it's my hope that the people that hurt them are also healing.
Yeah.
That's my prayer, and that's the only thing. I don't think, for me personally, there's not much wisdom in hope,
Mm.
because it allows for procrastination. But that's one thing I hope for, that whatever heart hurt those horses down there at my barn, I hope that it's healing through their work.
Mhm. Yeah. And that's probably a beautiful place to wrap up for today. You know, there's just,
Okay, yeah,
yeah, you
this
know,
was
we could keep,
fantastic.
yeah, this is great. And I'm happy to do it again at some point if you're willing. This was just a
Yeah,
really, really
this was
beautiful
awesome.
conversation. Yeah,
Yeah,
cool. Yeah, really,
all
really
right,
beautiful conversation. Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to post information about Nahshon on in the text about this video. So if you're interested in learning more, you can check him out. You've got a Facebook page, I believe, right?
yeah,
And then, yeah, so we'll get that listed there for you. So feel free to have
great.
a look and follow his work and check him out at a local clinic. You've got a lot of different events coming up this year, I
So
think.
many, so
Yeah.
many. And
Hmm.
and yeah, I'm thankful and overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I'm thankful and overwhelmed with
Yeah.
gratitude. Yeah, so thank you for your time too. This was
Thank
beautiful.
This is lovely. Thank you so much. We'll chat again. I'm just going to stop the recording here and then we'll have
Yeah.
a couple moments before we wrap up. Thanks so much.